I visited IMH, Institute of Mental Health. I've seen a psychiatrist. Um, so that was where I was given antidepressants. I was given medication to deal with the depression. Personally, there's a resistance to it. It's just like people say, hey, I'm not xiao, Like, why am I xiao? It's very hard to come to terms with the fact that you have mental issues.
Hey guys, it's Shulin. After the Bar will kick off in just a moment. But before we dive in, it would mean a lot if you could show your support by leaving a 5-star rating and hitting the follow button on Spotify. If you're tuning in on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the thumbs up button. Thank you so much and enjoy the episode. Welcome to After the Bar. This season, we're talking about navigating change and career pivots. Today, we have someone who's pivoted from being a gangster to be a lawyer. And before becoming a lawyer, he was cleaning toilets in one of the law firms here. At the lowest point of his journey, he became almost bankrupt. He was divorced. He was staying in a one-room flat. And he even had a mild stroke. Today, he has a successful law firm in Victor's. And he just bought an amazing penthouse apartment. Welcome, Josephus!
Yay!
Congrats!
Thank you.
Okay, my first question is, how did you do that? How do you go from being almost bankrupt to where you are now today?
Wow. Okay. Actually, it wasn't so long ago. 2017, right? So just about 7 years ago. So I think the very short answer to your question is this. You just have to keep moving ahead, taking baby steps. And I know it's cliche, but everybody says that, take one step at a time. It's literally that. So I think when everything went down, I thought the first thing that I should do is just to keep breathing. Just to tell yourself that, hey, you know what, just keep breathing and see where life takes you, And then in terms of the money, the finances, how much you earn, you just save as much as you could. They always say it's always a good habit to save for rainy days. And I think that was true in my case.
Yes.
So, you just have to keep believing that as long as you keep moving ahead, you don't give up, then there is hopefully light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
That's really it.
Amazing. And I'm so inspired by how you kept bouncing back from failure after failure.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder as well, like life is so difficult, for Josephus, It's like, can I just lead an ordinary life? Yeah, sometimes I wonder to myself also.
Yeah. Let's rewind a little bit back to your 20s.
Okay.
Right? Because at the age of 22, you suddenly got inspired that you no longer wanted to be a gangster. You decided to do a diploma. How did that moment come about?
So I think this part of the story, because I always tell people that, the journey of Josephus, right? I think it's like a trilogy. There are 3 parts to it. So the first part will be the formative years, right? The growing up years. Then the second part will be the transition to becoming a lawyer, the journey of me going to UK to further my education and so on and so forth. And then finally the third part, which is what happened 7 years ago, how, I was almost at the top of my game and I fell down again, and how I managed to climb up for the second time. So 3 parts. Right, so I think your question pertains to, I think, pretty much the first part.
Yes.
The formative years, right? So yeah, I've been failing all my life in school. If we want to really go back all the way, right, I would think that everything started with bullying, I think pretty much I was a victim of bullying. All right, back in primary school, I was scrawny. I was really skinny. And that funny how I wasn't into sports, You know how they say that in schools, right? You have all the school jocks, The cool boys are like playing basketball, soccer, track and field. But I think since young, as far as I can remember, I wasn't very sporty. And funny, I was like more interested in the girly stuff. Yeah, like for example, I think back in the days, I think the girls were collecting like cute letterheads,
Right.
like cute erasers, And funny, I was into that, I was like, hey, it's interesting, like I like handicraft, I like music, and then I like to read. And yeah, so I still remember my ECA.
Yes.
Then when they call it ECA, now they call it CCA.
Mhm.
I was a librarian.
Oh, so was I.
Oh, okay.
How old were you when you were a librarian?
I think I was in primary 3, primary
Yeah,
4,
yeah.
and then at the same time I also enjoyed gardening.
Oh.
You see what I mean, right?
Yes, yes.
Like it's very unusual for a boy back in the 80s to be like to be a librarian, to be a gardener, whereby you should be like the cool kid, you should be playing basketball, you should be in track and field.
Yeah.
But I was none of those because I think physically I was weak as a child. I got asthma, I was sickly, I was small and scrawny. So always being made fun by other boys. So I think in a way I grew up with a chip on the shoulder.
Mm-hmm. So when you were in primary school, how were you bullied?
No, I think they laugh at you. I mean, I grew up in a blue collar family, in a poor family. Um, so like my mom then was working in a factory. She was a housewife. She transitioned to work in a factory. My dad was working as a security guard and double up the night shift as a dough bread maker in one of the factories in the West. So I think at a very young age, um, we weren't taught to aspire. We were taught to survive. So back in the days, I still remember my parents would be like, hey, if you can't study, never mind lah. Just go out and find a job. That was the thinking then. I think it's not just unique to my family, but I think it was that generation. So or what you call the pioneer and Merdeka generation, right? Their thinking is always on survival mode. Very different from the generation now. All right. So yeah. So then you grew up. In a way, you grew up in the street lah. You grew up wanting to survive, and you couldn't care less about school. So if you're bullied in school, you don't voice out. It's not like now. It's not very woke.
Yeah.
Like nowadays, whereby if anything happens to you, you can turn to social media, you can speak to somebody, you can turn to your pastoral care worker in a school.
Yeah.
But back in the days, no.
You just had to suck it up.
You just have to suck it up. You just have to walk through it. Yeah. So I think name calling, people laughing at you. Of course, you get beaten up lah. I think in primary school it's quite normal. Back in the days, I think being beaten up in school is quite a normal thing. All right.
Maybe amongst the boys.
Probably amongst the boys.
Yes.
Then if they go to toilet, they'll kick down the door. So they are just being mischievous.
Right.
Right. But I think if you're on the receiving end of it, then it's different.
It's very traumatizing.
It's traumatizing. So a lot of people they do not understand like this can actually create a very deep impact for a growing child, mentally or emotionally.
Yes.
It can create mental health issues,
For sure.
in their later years. And I think initially I didn't think much of it, but when I track back, right, I think the genesis was that. So I was a victim of bullying back in primary school, and it went on to secondary school as well. So of course, back in the 80s and 90s, I think gangsterism was very rampant. In fact, very rampant in the neighborhood schools. So and many of the neighborhood schools, they have a certain reputation.
Yes.
All right. So I still remember the first day I entered secondary school. It was a neighborhood school. It has now since been demolished. Then it was like you just got dragged into the toilet. You be like, huh? You say, follow me, go toilet. I was like, so wearing my glasses, right? Big round glass. I'm like, huh? Go toilet, do what? Shut up, just follow. Then just go to the toilet. Then when you enter the toilet, you're surrounded by like 3 or 4 older boys, much taller, and probably they are from the upper secondary, right? And then they straight away just demanded your wallet. They wanted you to give them money. Then they bullied you, like they slap you around. They threaten you. They said, who am I? I'm from this gang. We control the turf in the school. So you better, give us money every week, or you can choose to join us. Yeah, so I got slapped around, and that was really my first day in secondary school. I was shocked. I was like, wow. So what have I gotten myself into, So this is what neighborhood school is all about. This is a jungle. But of course, I'm saying it was the situation then, not now. Now I think all schools are very good schools.
Well,
back
I
then,
think bullying is still rampant, but it's a different song.
different, yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
on social media, all kinds of bullying
Correct.
can
Yeah,
take
it's
place.
not so physical anymore.
Yes.
So thereafter, then I remember throughout the years in secondary school, I think from time to time we get beaten up, from time to time you get threatened, from time to time you get extorted, and like what we talked about earlier, you just suck it up, lah.
Mm.
You know, and then of course, you know, the usual, lah. If you cannot beat them, what do? You join them, lah. All right. So of course, after a while being victimized, being bullied, then you realize that, hey, you know, enough is enough. Now you want to start the bullying, you know. So you end up, because you're weaker, you join the stronger group, then you end up taking on their form, you see. It's just like how they say, hurt people.
Yes.
It's true, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like if you are young, you are being beaten up. Chances are that when you grow up, you start beating people.
And you have that resentment.
Yes.
And you need to take it out somewhere.
Yeah.
Wow. So I remember in the interview that you said at 12 years old, you started smoking.
Yeah.
And at 14, you started drinking. So even before you joined a
First gang fight, 16.
16, okay.
Yeah. So it's all in succession.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why 12 years old, like primary 6, right? Why I
Yes.
started smoking? It's just because of the fact that you realize, okay, I mean, maybe you are at the age whereby you are trying to experiment with things. So you hang around with similar kids who got no aspiration. They just want to attend school, you know, play truancy lah.
Yes. Do you still smoke today?
Good question. And I love it that you asked that question. You know what? Fun fact.
Yes.
I quit smoking this year.
Congratulations.
After more than 30 years.
Wow, that's such a milestone.
So that is actually the
Josephus.
first exclusive content on your podcast. That I'm
Amazing.
announcing to the whole country that I actually quit smoking.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And it sounds like you were like, if we can't beat them, join them.
I think it's very common. It's not just me. I think during that era, many, because I'm still in contact with many of my friends or people from that generation. A lot of them, when they became naughty kids, they joined the gangs, both guys and girls alike, right? And a lot of them were for the same reasons. They all started off as victims of bullying, or they were just weaker. They didn't know any better. They were ignorant. They were not cool. They decided it's social pressure lah. Peer pressure. They want to feel a sense of belonging. And I think that part is still true now, you know, for the kids who are involved in gangs these days, you know. It's just a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose. It's like joining a club, joining a fraternity. If you suck in school, you suck at your job, you have no aspiration, you just want to find people of a similar sort, like birds of a feather flock together, you know. It's true, you know. Until today, it's still the same issue. And I feel that, just to digress a little bit, I think if the stakeholders, they seriously want to stem out this whole gang problem amongst our youth, I think first we must look at finding them a purpose. It's really not so much about the criminality, but it's more about the social factors, about like making sure that our kids are not being bullied in school. Right? I think that is a very good starting point to make sure that they have a purpose, they enjoy what they're doing, don't just focus on the grades and the grades and the grades, you know. And I think our education ministry is doing a fantastic job. At least now we don't just focus on grades. We are looking at your ability, your interest, even national service. You can even opt for the kind of specialist units that you want to join. I think it's great. I think it's not just a new generation thing.
Yes.
But I think it's more targeted, and I think it's very aspirational.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think this will go a long way to stem out all these so-called delinquency problems which I experienced back in my days lah.
Yeah, but I love what you said about hurt people. That's why I tell my son actually.
Yes.
Because even in kindergarten, there's bullying that happens, right?
Oh, yes.
And first it starts with forgiving the other person, but sometimes you have to forgive yourself because you think, hey, how come I'm not strong enough to stand up to the bully?
Yes.
And then you get, there's built up, pent up resentment, anger. So what was the turning point? So you became a gangster, first gang fight at 16, and then you did all kinds of odd jobs. You were cleaning toilets at a well-known law firm.
That was later actually.
Okay.
So 16, right? So basically, so the usual rebellious age, 15, 16, you know. And again, just if there are parents out there listening to this podcast, I just want to share with them. If your boy or girl, right, at the age of 14 to 16, if they never turn rebellious, they're okay, right? That means you clear.
Wow.
after 16, you are in the clear. But if they are going to be naughty, it's going to be between this age, 14 to 16.
Wow, better lock them up at home.
Yeah, so 14 to 16, just be a bit more watchful and really spend more time. Because once they are past 16, right, and they're on the right track, if they are not getting into like massive trouble or anything or brushes with the law, right, then they're okay. They're okay.
But it's very difficult if you're, because I know friends with teenagers in their house who are barely talking to them and they're constantly on their phones. It's very difficult to connect. And
same goes for my stepdaughter actually. So I'm remarried and I have, my wife has a daughter from the previous marriage. She's now in J2, all right, 18 years old. Yeah, so in fact, I observed that, initially I thought that, hey, maybe she's weird, you know. But I realized that no, it's her generation, you know. It's like Chinese, they say 手不离机, you know. The phone doesn't leave the hands, you know. So everywhere they go, they're on the phone, even in the shower, even during meal times. And it's just their generation.
right.
But if you take a more enlightened approach, that might not be a bad thing. Why do I say that? It's because that is their generation. That is the environment that they grew up in. So they are connecting to their peers, they are connecting to their world in that way. So I think for the older generation like us, if we are going to force our views on them, saying that, hey, you guys are very rude, you know, you guys are not socially connected, you guys are not very informed like our generation, I don't think it's very helpful. I think you will further disconnect from them. You'll push them deeper into the abyss, you know. They will just shut themselves off because that is their world and their world is different from yours.
Yeah.
So I think what will really help parents out there who are listening to this podcast is that you need to understand their world, understand their lingo, understand the applications they are using. So basically just understand that they are living in the digital age, unlike yours and your forefathers.
Yes, maybe the same philosophy applies. If you can't beat them, join them. So maybe go on TikTok too.
Exactly.
You know, make videos together with them if they want to.
Why not?
Find
Why
a
not?
common interest.
I think even if you don't participate in what they're doing, but at least you have an understanding of what they're doing. I think that
Yes.
helps because I think many of the older, it happens at all generations.
Yes, yeah.
Like the older ones will always say, oh, you know, during my time, you know, we didn't do it like that. Your generation, all weird one.
Yes.
Our forefathers used to say that to us. And now
Yes.
we are saying that to our younger generation. I think it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, it is. So Josephus, are you saying that between 14 to 16, you didn't have much attention from your parents who were very probably busy working?
I think I don't have much attention from my parents since a young age. At a very, very young age. I think I can still remember at the age of like primary 1, then my parents would just give me like a few cents and say, okay, you can take bus to school yourself. And I don't blame them for it. It's because they are working parents, they are
Yeah.
blue collar family. They need to survive. So I think at a very young age, during that time, many Singaporeans are in a blue collar family. They were taught to survive at a very young age. So
Fend for
nowadays,
yourself.
yeah, you think about it. When have you heard the last time like a primary 1 student taking bus to school himself or herself? It's quite unheard of, you know. Nowadays, daddy, mommy will send you to school,
there's
chauffeur
the
you
school
to school,
bus.
or even until you are university, they still chauffeur you to school, you know. But during our time, no leh. Primary school, you start to take your own bus, you know, public transport, you know. I know it can be quite dangerous, but that was then, you know. I think on hindsight, the good thing is that your survival instinct is very high. And you are born
Street smart.
Yeah, street smart. You are born very resilient. You are a tough cookie. So I think there are some advantages you know, that came with being you know, streetwise at a
Yes,
young
yes,
age. You
yes.
know.
So what do gangsters do? I mean, it's I'm asking from a very sheltered Singaporean point of view.
Right.
We hear of gangs. My knowledge of gangsters is that they get protection money, they have turf. You know, what do they call it? 保护费, right?
Yeah,
but that was what I grew up watching Channel 8 shows.
All right.
What do gangsters do?
Good things and bad things happen when people start looking for a purpose in their lives. You know, so they can either look down the wrong hole or the right hole, you know. And I think to sum up, I think one thing that is common, you know, when we compare to the gangs of yesteryears and the gangs now, right, is that I think they are all just trying to find their place in this world. They are just trying to find a common purpose. And they're just trying to find a strength in numbers, solidarity. They want to know that they're not alone in this world. That's really the mentality of all the gangsters that I've known, I've come into contact with, I represented in my line of work. from the young to the middle age to the older gangsters. It's all the same. So if you ask me back in the yesteryears during our ancestors, our forefathers' time, right? The gangsters, yeah, sure. If you want to go back all the way in history, right? Actually, there's a very romanticized interpretation of gangs. So they were all immigrants. Our forefathers were all immigrants.
Yep.
So when they gathered in Singapore, right? We talk about the Chinese immigrants, right? They group themselves according to their dialect group.
Yes.
So you have the Cantonese fraction, Hokkien fraction, right? So they came to Singapore and they decided to band together like band of brothers, right? To look out for each other. All right? It's a fraternity. So I think it all started like that. Or even if you want to go back earlier, back in history, like in China or in other parts of Southeast Asia, like many of them, they have like political endeavors, 反清复明,
yes,
that
that's
kind,
right, that's right.
So band of brothers, we are the dissidents, we are the minorities, we band together to overthrow the majority, blah, blah, blah. So I think that is the romanticized version of triads, of Chinese gangs.
Yep.
Coming back in Singapore's context, we talk about the gangsters of yesteryears, right? Yes, it was about fighting over territories. It was about extortion rackets. It was about running the brothels, running the gambling dens, to them, it's just their a way of life.
It's a business.
It's a business. They are mostly uneducated. They feel that this is the way I can earn money, or you can even do loan sharking, and all that. All right. But you see, I think the question is this: why do they still persist for so many generations? I think this is one thing that maybe our stakeholders should really think about. I think it's a chicken and egg thing. It's like, if you solve the social problems, then maybe you also solve the gang problems, because then the gangs will start to lose its relevance.
How many gangs are there in Singapore today?
Wow, lost count lah. So many. So there are old gangs, there are new gangs, but long and short of it, many of the gangs they have been around for decades, And it's just that right now, whatever that you see, mostly the young people, right? They affiliate themselves very loosely with the gangs. They say, oh, I'm from this particular gang. I chant the gang logo. I hang around in this area, but they are not really gang per se.
Right.
It's very loose.
Okay. So just curious, why do gangsters do what they do?
The long and short of it is this: whether is it the hardcore members, or we talk about the amateur members lah. I think it's just about finding a sense of belonging. The saying, the birds of a feather flock together, right? I think many of them, if you trace back, both boys and girls alike, they usually come from a certain demographics in society. And I think they just band together just to find common leisure or common purpose lah. So to answer your question more specifically, they are just like you and me. So the things that they do, what do? They go out for movies, they go out for meals, they go and sing karaoke. Of course, I mean, we have heard of the more deviant ones, like they organize drug parties at chalets, or sometimes, of course, they organize gang fights, settlement talks, Yeah. So if you really zoom out and look at it from a macro perspective, it's just very social.
Yes. And it sounds to me that they are all looking for something to fulfill them. There's a void inside.
Yeah.
They're looking for a purpose.
Uh-huh.
What made you uncover your own purpose? Because you were seeking, right?
Yeah.
But you didn't know you were. So you fell into a gang, you became a gangster, fell into bad company. So what was that turning point?
I think the turning point is this. So, I mean, for people who had dabbled with gangs before, I think it's this. There are two groups. There are those who got very entrenched because they feel that, hey, this is my purpose, I want to have a career in it. I want to be a professional gangster. So you will have that group of people, and they still persist after all these decades. But then I think also quite a large group of the people who used to dabble in gangs, right? Like myself included. You will be the so-called enlightened group. You realize that after a while, it's all the same. It's a bit meaningless. It's repetitive. And you don't see the value add, so-called to speak, like, okay, how does this benefit me, Because you grow older. So when you're younger, you realize that, yeah, it's fun. You go and threaten somebody, you go and beat up somebody, you take drugs, you get wasted on alcohol, blah, blah, blah. It's fun, all right? You don't realize the repercussions of your actions. But as you grow older, you realize that, okay, so how does it benefit me in a very, very good way? Like, like, what about career prospects? Like, how do I earn money? Apart from the tata sasa, all the killings, the beatings, you go into boys' home, you get locked up by the police, blah, blah, blah. So what about the good things? So I think it's about maturity, coming of age. So quite a sizable group of us, right? We realized that, hey, I think we grow up, we want to have family, we want to find somebody who loves us, we want to have a house, we want to have a job, we want to go for nice holidays. So that is where I think naturally it dawned upon you that maybe it's time to grow up. So it's a growing up thing.
Hey everyone, if you're enjoying the episode, don't worry, we'll be right back in a moment. Remember to show After the Bar some love by giving us a 5-star rating on Spotify or a thumbs up on YouTube. Your support will help us make a much bigger impact. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. Because at 22, you decided to do a diploma.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what prompted you to do that?
Okay. So I think that one was a bit more distant from the gang days, because I think the gang, the dabbling with the gangs and all that was in the formative years.
Right.
But I think, like what I said earlier, as you grow older, you realize that, hey, what's the meaning of all this?
Yeah.
You want better things for yourself. So by then, of course, I think I got too deep into this whole nonsense, like getting wasted on drugs, on alcohol. You have a rage problem. You go into a state of depression. You just find that life is meaningless. And I was only like, 21? I just got out from NS. And I thought national service was my first true purpose in life. Until today, I still think that national service is great. I think everybody should go through it, because I think that was the period of my life where I found a purpose.
Yeah.
I was a martial arts instructor.
Wow.
In a national during NS. But why do I think that is purposeful? Is because then I was given a role.
Yes.
As a trainer. I trained hundreds or if not thousands of army boys.
Wow.
I felt a sense of purpose.
That's impressive.
I felt that, at least I'm doing something useful in my life. I can command, I can train a group of people.
And Josephus, just how you touched on, before you fell into your purpose, before you became a martial arts instructor, you were in a state of depression.
That has always been, I think, underlying. Through, I think more so after I left national service. So I think the thing got amplified. So initially I told you I was just like a rebel, right? A teenage juvenile delinquent, gangster. So you mix around with the wrong people, and then after that you have been failing all your school grades and all that, and then after that you transit, because as a boy you have to go through national service.
Yes.
So you transit. So I thought at that moment it was a moment of relief for the 2 years in national service, because I found something very useful. And then after the 2 years, then I left army, and I realized, okay, back to the shithole, back to square one. So here I am in the workforce, 21 years old. I have no academic qualifications. I have no work experience, real work experience to begin with. So what's next? Find a job, right? So I think I found a job as a computer salesman. And there's no knowledge of fiscal management. 今朝有酒今朝醉. That means whatever that you earn today, you spend tonight.
Just living from paycheck to paycheck.
Exactly. So there I was, again, just doing a job, spending the money on alcohol, on friends, on drugs. So it's just a very meaningless existence, I realized. And then I think things came to a halt. That every time when I'm intoxicated,
Yeah.
I flew into a rage. It's very, very bad. I have a very violent temper. And so I end up hurting people around me, my family.
Physically.
Physically, emotionally, mentally, Yeah, physically, yes. So I hurt my loved ones, my ex-girlfriend, my siblings, my parents. So I think on that fateful night, I think that was when I was 22 years old. There was one incident, I think I lost it, Yeah, and I beat up my ex-girlfriend then. I overturned the house. I crashed everything in the house, destroyed everything in the house, overturned. So I think my father, my late father, intervened.
Yes.
And I think at that moment, I still remember that it was very close to death. I still remember in that rage, I wanted to throw that girl off the balcony, and after that, to jump off the balcony myself. But I think at that moment, split moment, my dad came into the picture and pulled us to safety, gave me 2 tight slaps, and then I lost consciousness. Yeah. So these are all captured in my media stories
Yes.
lah. For it's available
It's
online.
very well known. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the very next day when I woke up and I saw the carnage that I did, right, then I had a heart-to-heart chat with my dad. I think that was where I realized that I have a problem.
Mm.
That I think in short, I'm either looking at death or I'm looking at imprisonment lah. The long and short of it lah. It's a matter of time. That was
What were
what my
the
dad told
exact
me.
words your dad said to you?
I think my dad said this like you have been naughty and rebellious all your life. You have been failing all your life. Has it ever occurred to you to do good for yourself? Just one time. Just be nice to yourself. Not be nice for your parents, not be nice to your girlfriends, to your friends. Just be nice, be good to yourself and do a good thing for yourself. And I still remember I was a bit puzzled by that, It sounds like an existential question, I mean, my dad was uneducated lah. So, yeah, I didn't expect that coming from him, It's quite a profound question. And then that got me thinking, and I asked him, I said, yeah, why do you ask me this question? And then my dad went on to rationalize to say, because if you have experienced bad and you have experienced good, and then you decide it is about making an informed decision, then you choose lah. So if you have tried both good and bad and you decided that you prefer to be bad, then okay lor, your choice lah, your life. And then he left it as that. And that really got me thinking deep.
Mm.
And I think also my faith has something to do with it as well. So it was at that juncture whereby I, after that conversation, it's true enough, I think there's something just blocking my heart, there's something heavy and there's something hurting.
Yeah.
And I think it's divine intervention. I really think it was divine intervention. There are no other ways to explain that, So when people ask me, have I ever experienced miracles in my life? And I told them yes. Maybe not in the cinematic, in the Hollywood way, like, oh, suddenly there's an angel with wings and halo descending down from heaven. Not in the dramatic sense. But I think from time to time I see miracles. Because I will call these miracles, meaning to say these are coincidences whereby you cannot quite explain it. And that session with my dad was one of them.
There are no coincidences in life, I believe.
Exactly right.
Yes, everything happens for a reason and a purpose.
Yeah. So as I was saying, so after that conversation with my dad, it got me thinking. And I realized that there's a void in my heart. And like what I said earlier, hurt people. And I realized that I was hurting inside, but I couldn't quite explain it. So I don't know, by then, I was godless. I was fearless. I have nothing to wish for and nothing to live for. So I just look up at the sky lah. I was just like, okay, whoever you are out there, if you are listening to this, can you just take away the hurt? Just give me a chance. Let me restart this whole thing. So that was maybe what people will call a prayer. So that was what I said, then. And then I restarted the whole process. That was the very first day I said a prayer. I forgive myself. I told myself, I said that I have a problem. I have a drinking problem. I have a rage problem. I might even have a depression problem. Okay, I accept it totally. So to me, that is the first stage. And after that comes the second stage, which is that how are you going to help yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
did you ask people for help?
Oh no, I didn't. Actually, I restarted. So it was back to basics. I always tell people, a lot of people have been asking me like, so how, if you're in that situation or my children in that situation, how do you advise them to restart? I said, first, you have to internalize and accept that you screw up, accept the fact that you failed, accept the fact that, this is something you cannot change. You have to internalize this. You have to forgive yourself. Because if you cannot forgive yourself, you cannot expect the world to forgive you and to accept you. So it starts with you. After that, move on to finding the solutions. And you really got to mean it lah. So for me, I told myself back to basics, meaning to say that I could wake up at 8 a.m. every day, have a nice shower, read the papers, make my own breakfast, yeah, and find a job, So that was the whole toilet washing thing lah. So I was just doing odd jobs, I was looking at the papers to see whether, I even like painted houses for people. I move furnitures, I sell computers, second-hand computers. So there was one sting, I still remember my friend was running a cleaning company. So he just called me and said, hey, do you want to do this cleaning job? It's $50 a day. I said, sure. So basically we will pair up with a foreign worker and we will go and wash toilet. I'm like, sure. So ironically, right, unknown to me then, we went to this commercial building in CBD area, and we were washing, I think, a few levels of executive toilets. And it turned out to be Singapore's biggest law firm.
Yeah.
So apparently they are going to exit the building and move to a newer building.
Yes.
So we are doing the post cleaning.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have come so far, Josephus, from cleaning toilets of a law firm to now owning your own law firm.
Exactly.
Come on.
Right. That's why I say that sometimes when you look back, right, life is just so strange, right?
Yeah.
And the saying that God works in mysterious ways.
Absolutely. I was just thinking that.
Correct, right?
Yes.
And it's like, but you wouldn't know it then, but it's only after a certain period of time when you look back, you realize that actually you can connect all the dots.
Yes.
They all happen for a reason. Like somebody just planned it,
Yes. And you had to go to the, in this case, really to the toilets, to the level of cleaning toilets. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
it's a respectable job.
Of course.
To, I guess, pick yourself up.
Correct.
I want to talk a bit more about depression because I understand that people who have depression have difficulty even waking up, going for a shower. So is that how you pick yourself up? And how did you even know you were having depression?
I think first and foremost, the telltale sign is this: you lack a motivation to survive. You lack a motivation to, like what you rightly mentioned, to even want to do the basic things. Like you don't even find the motivation to want to wake up. I think that is the early telltale signs of depression. I mean, in general, I don't want to I'm not expert. We don't dive into the different sorts of depression.
Yes.
But I think depression as a whole is that you just find that there's a fundamental lack of motivation to do anything.
Right.
So and it was my situation was amplified by the fact that I was drinking a lot of alcohol. I was intoxicated by alcohol, fused with drugs, and so it amplified the whole thing. And I realized that and you're always thinking negative thoughts. You find that life is meaningless, so what, if I wake up, so what if I do this? It doesn't matter at the end of the day. So the whole mental state is just very broken. Yeah, so I think that is a telltale sign of depression. And like I said earlier, after you completed stage 1, right, accepting what you cannot change, forgiving yourself, stage 2 entails that you seek professional help. So what I did was that I restarted my daily life, finding odd jobs, waking up on time, having a more regimented routine, so-called to speak. And thereafter, of course, to seek professional help, I went to see a psychiatrist. And again, on your podcast, this is one very unknown fact, which I don't often tell the media about, that I visited IMH, Institute of Mental Health. I've seen a psychiatrist. So that was where I was given antidepressants. I was given medication to deal with the depression. And yeah. So of course it's a taboo. It's a taboo then, maybe less of a taboo now. So
how old were you when you went to IMH?
I think I was at the age of 22. Yeah. They're about 21, 22.
But it takes courage to go and seek help.
Correct. Because I think then apart from it being a taboo, right? I think also there is personally there's a resistance to it. It's just like people say, hey, I'm not xiao, Like, why am I xiao? It's very hard to come to terms with the fact that you have mental issues. But I think it's a very common thing. And I think in our present day and age, we must come to embrace mental issues as just like your flu, your ordinary flu, or fever, or cough, It is like that. But of course, varying degrees of severity.
Yes.
But we have to remove that stigma.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yes.
So just to share, my coach, Susan De Silva, and a bunch of other lawyers, they conducted an informal anonymous poll amongst the legal profession. So I think about 400 to 500 people responded, and they described symptoms, either anxiety or depression. And a good 40 to 50% of people in the legal profession, practicing lawyers in Singapore, have those symptoms.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's so important to recognize what those symptoms are and seek help early. Yeah. And I mean, kudos to you for sharing this and thank you for being vulnerable.
No, I think it's important. I think there's no shame because nobody's perfect. And I think maybe then I resisted about sharing this openly is because, like I said, it's a stigma, lah, you know. I'm after all a lawyer, right? So what will people think, right? I might lose like professional credibility or whatever. But now when I think back at where I am right now, I think I'm in a very, very good and stable place. And I think it's time. And I think last year I've also been invited by Silver Ribbon Singapore to join their board as a board member.
Wow.
And which I gladly accepted.
Yes.
And I think it's timely. It's timely. And now with this podcast, you know, I think it's timely to talk about mental health.
Yes.
So coming back, yes, I was given antidepressants medication. So yeah, of course, people ask me, so how does it feel like, you know? I'm like, you feel like a zombie lah. So, wow, the medication is powerful, you know, but of course, in varying dosage lah. So the one I took, right, is that after you take the medication, it numbs you, you know. It's like, it numbs you from feeling a thing. That means you can't even feel sad. You can't feel happy. You're just like, okay. Like people tell you a joke, you'll be like, yeah, okay, Like you can't, like, it's numbing, you know. It numbs out your whatever senses, you know. Yeah. It's a very strange experience. So taking baby steps, stage 2. And then stage 3. When stage 2 is stabilized, that's where you start to aspire. Coming back to the conversation I had with my father, doing something good for yourself. So why is there something good? That is at stage 3. So one day, again, no coincidences, right? I was flipping through the papers and I saw a column, you know, an advertisement from a private school, advertising for external diploma in law. I was like, okay, a bit strange. You know that kind of feeling, some people call it instinct or whatever, but you just can't quite explain it.
It's a prompting.
Yeah, you'll be like, okay, first, I've been failing primary 3 until now. I don't like school. You know, I've left school for a long time. And now, external diploma in law. It's like such a big jump, right? But, so I thought, okay lah, maybe it's just fantasy. Forget it. But that image of that advertisement, right, kept playing in my head, you know. Like something in me tells me that, hey, explore this a bit further. And then one day, I just decided, I went to speak to my parents. By then, my parents weren't really talking to me. They're pretty much given up hope. They're just fine that I'm okay. You know, I'm not getting into trouble. So one day during dinner, I just approached them. I said, hey, I need a favor. Then I still remember my dad looked at me. What you want? You want money? Go buy drugs? Go and drink again, is it? So that was the relationship then. Then I said, no, I actually, yes, I need to borrow money. But it's not to drink. Then what you want? You don't bluff, okay? You always say it's for something, but end up drinking, end up taking drugs, end up getting drunk outside, end up at the police station, blah, blah, blah. Then my mother was cooking halfway and came out and heard the commotion and said, what? Hey, don't agitate your dad, you know, your dad's health is not good. What do you want now? I say, I want to borrow money to go and study. At that moment, right, there was awkward silence, okay? They all just turned around and looked at me like, sorry? What do you say? I said, I want to go back to school.
They almost fell off their chair.
No, they started laughing. All of a sudden, they just burst out laughing, you know. My dad was like, just laughed, you know. And my mom also stopped cooking and just started laughing, you know. They're saying that, are you okay or not? All these years of drinking damage your brain, You want to see a doctor or not? Then I was like, no. I said, I'm serious. Then they keep laughing, you know. They say, are you sure or not? They call me boy, by the way. They say, boy, don't bluff, lah. Are we hearing this right or not? Are you telling a joke or something? You leh. Like, I'm the middle child. I'm the second son. My older brother is a lawyer as well. I mean, he's always like the straight kid, you know, always like top in class, you know, like go to JC, you know. My younger brother is like a basketball school team captain, you know. So there I was telling them that I want to go back to school. They're like, you sure? I was like, yeah. Then I told them about the advertisement I saw, private school. Then they said, okay, never mind, I just entertain you lah. How much you need? I said 8,000. for 1 year lah. It's a night school.
Yeah.
Then they look at me and they say, we don't have that kind of money. Then I say, yeah lah, I mean, I can probably just work out jobs and save the money lah, but it'll take me some time. Then they say, okay. So 8,000 but no guarantee, Maybe we try borrow from your auntie lah. I say, okay lor, thanks. So, akang datang lah,
Yes.
let me know can. So, and then they laugh a bit, giggle. Then the conversation just died there. And later did I know, which until today I'm very grateful, profoundly grateful, that even though the relationship had broken down between me and my parents, but parents being parents, my mom went to ask my auntie lah, my maternal aunt. She was a retired school teacher. Okay. And retired school teacher under the old scheme, they have pension. So not bad now, they got savings and all that. So this is the fun fact. So my mom went to ask the older sister, retired teacher. So still remember, asked my auntie, oh, by the way, I need to borrow money from you because one of my sons want to go and further his study. Then my auntie still asked, which son is this? Then my mom said, my auntie said, is it the first one? Because the first one is very smart, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. My mom said no. Oh, is it the last one? I said no. Then my auntie was like, you mean it's the second one? The monster, is it? Yeah, lah. Words to those effect. He was like, are you sure? No. He said, cannot. He said, told my mom, you got 3 sons, The first one, third one can succeed, can already. The second one, if cannot, never mind. Give it to God or give it to the government. Okay, what it means is that go prison.
Let the government deal with it.
Deal with it, yeah.
Got it.
He said, you got 3 sons, lose one, never mind. You got 2 can already. Still okay. Then my mom said, no lah. My mom said, don't do that. He said, even though, yes, he gives the most trouble, but, after all, this is the last chance. He requested for a chance at education. And my mom said this, which I thought it was very moving. Until today, she said, we are poor people. At the end of the day, when we passed away, we have nothing to leave behind for our children. But if there's anything that I can leave behind for all my children, is this chance at education. And I hope you can lend me this money so that at least this is the only gift I can give to boy lah, the second one. So whether he's going to treasure this chance or not is up to him, but this is the last. And then when she said that, my auntie cried, My auntie said, okay, only for education, but on the condition that you're going to bring him to the school to register. Make sure he doesn't run away with the money or whatever. Then my mom said, okay. Then came back, my mom told me the news. I was like, excellent. Then I said, okay, so when can I do this? Then my mom said, boy, the condition is that I have to bring you there. I was like, no. I said, I'm an adult, I'm 22, Like, so paiseh, right? You bring me to the private school to register. I'm not like a teenager. And say, no, that's the condition. Which school you tell me, I go down with you. So I'm like, okay, lor. So I still remember when I went out to the private school, I was frightened. I was standing outside, feeling embarrassed. I was 22 years old, turning 23, So my mom went in, told the counter guy, said, hey, by the way, my son wants to register for this, external diploma in law. And I still remember that sales guy was like, oh, so your son just finished O-levels, is it? How old is your son, 16 or 17? Then my mom was, no, my son is the one standing outside. So then I still remember I was full black, wearing full black t-shirt, black jeans. My hair was really long. Then I was smoking outside, giving the very dodgy look. Then I still remember the sales guy was like, auntie, where's your son? Nah, the long hair one standing at the corner. Huh? That one, your son? He said, how old is your son? I said, oh, my son is 22. Then the guy was shocked. Then my mom said, shh, come in. So I went in. Then the guy asked me, so are you enrolling for this course? I said, yes. Is there a problem? Then the guy was frightened. I was like, oh, no problem. I just want to ask. Oh, so you are the guy enrolling for this? Yes. Okay. So fill in the form. Then my mom make the payment and all that lah. So the rest was history. So it was a 1-year night course. And so daytime I work odd jobs. Nighttime I will go to night class for 3 hours.
Amazing.
Yeah. But you see, what's the amazing part is that this is a diploma in law from University of London. And I thought, wow, not easy, right? But after 1 year, right, I actually passed,
Yeah.
I didn't do well. In all fairness, I didn't do well. I passed by a few marks. I was shocked, I was like, wow,
Meant to be.
this is something. And then, of course, one thing led to another. And I realized that, hey, actually, I'm not stupid after all. Actually, if I put my mind to it, I think this is the journey to recovery. This is also a journey for self-discovery.
Mm.
I think it's about time. So I took the second step. One day again during dinner, and I went to talk to my dad and mom. I said, I need another favor. They were like, what now? He said, you already got what diploma, right? Just go outside and find a job lah. I heard what with this diploma in law, you can become a paralegal or something in a law firm. You know what, boy? If you got small head, right, you wear small hat. If your head is very small, you don't wear big hat. There's a saying,
Yes,
right?
yes.
They say, boy, you got diploma now. Just lead a normal life. Get a job, find a nice girl, get married, apply HDB, happy forever. That's all. Okay? Then what do you want now? I say, no lah. I think I want to try. Say, try to be what? I want to be a lawyer. And that moment, awkward silence. And this time around, they laugh again. They laugh, And they say, so what do you say? I say, I want to be a lawyer. Say, huh? Lawyer? As in go to court, the lawyer? I say, yes. Then they laugh. Then this time around, I was very serious. I was like, why you all laugh? Not funny, ne? They say, boy, lawyer, not meant for people like you. I said, what do you mean? So my dad was like, it's not meant for people like us. I said, what do you mean? I said, we are blue collar family, We don't have this kind of blood, to become lawyers or doctors. Your brother, is a very good example. I mean, he worked hard all his life, But you, yeah, you have been failing, but okay lah, you pass a diploma. But to become a lawyer is a different thing altogether, You sure? It's not meant for you, boy. But I think that was the rebellious part of me. In a good way, I was like, I take it as a challenge. I said, no, I think I can do this.
Reverse psychology, maybe.
Yeah. Then my dad was like, okay, never mind, entertain you again. How much you need? I said, I need to go overseas lah. Because then there was only one law school, NUS, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and obviously the creme de la creme, you got to be the top student in order to enter lah, So, yeah, then I told my dad, I need to go overseas. I need 150,000. My dad was like, what? $150,000. 15,000. And this time around, my parents told me, say, boy, I think the dream stops there because we really can't afford this. Don't think your auntie can lend you that sum of money as well lah. The dream stops there. Then I was like, okay. I say, maybe I can find a way. He say, well, we can go ahead and ask lah. So we left the conversation as that. And I still remember in the days ahead, I went to scout for all the different banks. I check out with all the different financial leasing companies and all that. So luckily, we managed to find one local bank that offer education loan. Then they were saying that if approved, they will loan you the sum of money and they will defer the repayment until you graduate. So that was my breakthrough lah.
Amazing.
So I took that bank loan.
You flew to the UK, and I remember seeing in one of the videos that when you arrived in the UK with your suitcase, you were surprised to find a packet of something, a
Yes.
surprise from your mum.
Not drugs lah, of course. No, I mean drugs, but
It's drugs,
no,
yeah, different kind of drugs.
Yeah, different kind of drugs.
Can you tell us more about that?
I secured the bank loan, and then I still remember during the farewell, right, the departure at the airport. So some of my friends were there, my parents were there. Then my dad, usually being the dad, he was like, so not very like huggy, Then my mom was like teary and say, okay, you must take care of yourself, please don't do anything foolish, I was like, sure. So I went there. So when I reached the university, it was almost nightfall. So we were checking into the hostel, into my room. Then after that, I opened my suitcase. And then I discovered that there was a packet, tucked at the corner of the luggage. And I was like, I didn't pack this, I opened it up. And I saw that it was my IMH antidepressant medication. So I was shocked. So I called back home. I asked my mom, I said, hey, how come this medication is in the suitcase because I've stopped taking for some time already. And I told you already I'm okay. And I think what she said next, right, really brought me to tears, So the first night in a foreign land, being an older individual, I'm a mature student. Then I was 25 years old. Compared to my peers, right, they're all like 18, 19 years old, So my mom said this, boy, this might be a very tough journey. So I know you are better already. You stop taking the medication, but I just secretly put this in your luggage. Just keep this with you. If the going gets too tough, okay, remember to take your medication. Don't do anything foolish. Don't even think about committing suicide. Even if you fail, you come home in one piece. So I think, yeah, that moved me to tears. Mhm. Then I told her, I make a promise. I say, Mom, I promise you that throughout my 3 years here, no matter how difficult it can be, I'll come home. And for now, I will not touch the medication. I'll just put it aside for a while. Okay? So I left it as that. And I kept my promise. So for that 3 years, it was tough. It was tough. And I still remember I brought the medication back after I graduated. 3 years back to Singapore to throw it away in Singapore. And I told my mom at the airport when I arrived, I kept the promise that I didn't use any of the medication. I've recovered. And now I'm a man with a mission. And they asked me what mission. I said, to use my legal knowledge to help people. A promise I made to God.
What a victorious story of redemption.
Yeah. So I think that was a very sombering moment for me. As you can clearly tell, when I think about it, right, it's still very emotional for me.
Yes.
Yeah. Because
it's very moving.
Yeah. A mother's love, a father's love, even though they my generation, I think the parents, they were hard loving, they call it, they are not very expressive. They don't hug you, they don't tell you I love you, even till today. But it's through all these small little acts, they tell you that they really love you. And I think that was the kind of love that belonged to my generation, the older generation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I believe all parents have the same kind of love, but they
sure.
express it differently.
Yeah. And I'm sure your parents, your dad I know your dad has passed on. They're very proud of you.
Well, I hope so. And I think that is something which I gave in another interview, media interview, that I said that I think, especially what happened to me 7 years ago, right? Where I crumbled again in my life for the second time. Very major test. And what kept me going was that promise I made to my fathers. Why fathers, right? One father in heaven and another, my mortal father, that I promised that now that I've been given a chance to turn my life around, to be a lawyer. And I will do whatever it takes to make sure that I continue on this mission to help more people, to raise more awareness for the law, to help the underprivileged people. So a lot of people, they have been asking me, like, Joe, why are you doing this? Are you a media whore? Like, you like the attention, is it? You like fame, Like, I say, no leh. Because I think there is a method to the madness. As in, like, pro bono, everybody do pro bono, right? Everybody does pro bono, all right? But for me, it has become a core mission. And a lot has to do with my past, like the incidents which I mentioned, a promise that I made to God, and a promise I plan to keep for the rest of my life.
Amazing. I love that.
And that brings us to the end of part 1 of our conversation with Josephus Tan. Stay tuned for part 2 of our conversation with Josephus in the next episode.
Thank you, Josephus, for sharing your experience with us today. To all our listeners, I hope you enjoyed watching this episode. If you're watching on YouTube, drop your thoughts in the comments and hit that subscribe and thumbs up button. For Spotify users, don't forget to hit that follow button and give us a 5-star rating. Feel free to share this episode with all of your friends so they can join the conversation too. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next episode of After the Bar.